sports fans. Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen, on a Friday. It is breaking news today. We are all excited and all in for this one. And, of course, we got some hockey talk amongst us. Alex Signet joining us here on the show here in a couple minutes. I am so excited for this one because I know he's just as amped up as I am for the hockey playoffs. Chase is going to be joining us here around the corner, wherever and however you may be watching and listening. Thanks for making us part of your evening. But, yeah, breaking news around the NFL, and there is no better time than on a Friday where we have our standing predictions, playoff predictions. I think this is going to be a fun, amazing season in the NFL. But before we bring up our guest here on the show, I do want to end up breaking this out. So breaking news, and this was easily predictable. So the San Francisco 49ers and Brock Purdy, they have come to an agreement with each other on a 5-year, $265 million contract, which is $181 million guaranteed, and he's getting paid of upwards $53 million per year. Oh, Lordy. You knew that this was going to end up coming around at some point. Now, I know a lot of people have told me, Jake, you see, he got paid at least over $50 million. How could you possibly end up, shamming on Brock Purdy like you do? Well, I'm not doing that at all. I was being reasonable and honest. Chase is always my witness on this show. I don't ever badmouth a lot of players, but I like to be honest and reasonable. So congratulations, San Francisco. You got a deal done, but good luck being the Dallas Cowboys last year. And the only reason I say that is because if you recall what happened with Dallas last year, they were in the same boat. Jerry Jones rolling out the red carpet. I know Chase doesn't even want to remember that week 1 against the Cowboys, but Dak got his money, CeeDee Lamb got his money, and the Cowboys won on the road in Cleveland. I mean, this is typical. Once you end up rolling out the contract, I mean, everybody feels like, oh, this is the Cowboys' year to do it. But the San Francisco 49ers, and I looked at their schedule, and Chase and I will be breaking it down on the tail end of the show, but the 49ers have a cupcake schedule, and you just paid a B quarterback A-plus money. You know what that translates to me? You're not making the playoffs. I'm sorry, but the last few quarterbacks that we have seen getting paid the bag, as everybody says, they don't make the playoffs that year because several things will happen. Number one, inconsistency at quarterback because the weight of the bag is a real thing. Number two, key injuries, whether it's on the quarterback or the offensive line or your offensive weapons. We just saw what happened with Brandon Ayuk last year. Didn't show up to camp, tore an ACL. He was out the entirety of the year, and he took a month off until he got a contract. Typical. This is what happens when you fight on contract negotiations. And everybody hates it, but that's the reality of business. You are trying to meet eye to eye and come to an agreement with a contract extension. So Brock Purdy, and this is what I'm going to end up showing you from here.
But looking at Purdy's stats, and I know a lot of people all have been hammering at me about what Brock Purdy has done rather than just what I'm seeing from all throughout his career. Last year, before he went, before the Niners, they missed the playoffs, had 3,800 passing yards, 20 touchdowns, and 12 picks with a QBR of 67. Yeah, it was not great. But Brock, we know, can throw the ball, but he's also accustomed to a successful system that Kyle Shanahan puts together. So is that truthfully Purdy, or is that Kyle Shanahan in the making? I mean, I've never understood this. And I've watched the Cowboys. I have watched the Dolphins. I have watched several other teams with their star quarterbacks, even with Trevor Lawrence when he got the 55. It didn't look good in year one of that contract. And that's exactly what's going to happen with San Francisco. And you have a cupcake schedule. That cupcake schedule is easily going to turn around and bite you in the you-know-what. Because once you pay out that contract, everything now is weighed on you. The star quarterback, the savant, the savior of the franchise. He's not. Brock Purdy, and I know everybody doesn't like it when I say this, but he is Jimmy Garoppolo with wheels. Because Jimmy G, you think about it, had same accuracy, same pass distribution, and they both made it to a Super Bowl, and they both lost. But we know Purdy being Mr. Irrelevant, okay? It's a beautiful story. It's a great story. But sometimes Cinderella stories, they only last for a year. I treat those just like I treat one-hit wonders. And I am a 90s kid, so I know all about one-hit wonders. I've heard so much music being made by Red Hot Chili Peppers for a long time. And not to mention, you got, I grew up with bands like Green Day and several others who are putting out more music. When was the last time you ever heard of Chumbawamba putting out another album? When was the last time you ever heard it? It was a one-hit wonder. It was fun. It's a classic. Those don't last very long. Brock Purdy, and this is part of the reason why I said on the show, Chase is my witness, why the Niners should have drafted Shedeur Sanders. I'm not saying Purdy is terrible. Because you paid him the money, be careful with what happens during the season. I don't see the Niners getting at the LA Rams this year because Matthew Stafford, and he's got more weapons, and he's also got a pretty good defense there in front of him, and the offensive line is also pretty good. I mean, the Rams are going to win this division, but that's going to be a lot of weight on San Francisco. So that cupcake you guys are seeing looks great on paper. But once you hit the field and you're playing your division rivals twice a year, and you're also playing a couple of teams that are built for the trenches on the run game, you're going to see very quickly what that looks like on the offensive line. They drafted a lot of defensive players, but I'm concerned because Trent Williams is going to be retiring at some point. You need to get everybody all on the same pages on your offensive line, and at the same time, is Christian McCaffrey going to come back the same player? And you just lost Jordan Mason to Minnesota. I don't know about San Francisco. And truthfully, if you didn't pay Brock Purdy that massive amount of money, you actually could have used it to secure your future. But they'll figure it out. But again, congrats to Brock Purdy. I'm not hating on this at all. But all I say is good luck to the entirety of the season, San Francisco. You are starting to look like the Dallas Cowboys last year, and this is why Dak and CeeDee Lamb, they both restructured the minute that all happened. All right, so the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs have been so fantastic. And my guest coming up onto the show, we're going to be talking a lot about it. The NHL draft lottery as well is just ridiculous. And, because we talk about the NBA draft lottery, and even that was pretty insane. So joining us here up onto the show, Powell Sigmund here on the show.
we finally got other hockey guy on the show, and I'm so happy that I did. But I want to start with this. So you and I are both hockey guys, and we love the Stanley Cup playoffs, and it's just been fantastic. So I want to start with this. So the Washington Capitals and the Carolina Hurricanes. The Hurricanes move on. My breakdown of this is I think Carolina was just so good at being a puck distributing team where they're going to move the puck around, find open spots, especially when you get Svechnikov and Sebastian Aho and several others on that offensive side. It's just going to be a lot for a team like Washington. What did you take away from that series? Because truthfully, I love both these coaches, Ashby, Rod Brindamore, but I just think Carolina really had a chip on their shoulder, and they're also on a mission as well as the other teams we'll talk about here in a second. But what did you think about this series as a whole?
Well, I appreciate you having me on the show, Jake. It's fun. I would say that I think Carolina played to its strengths. They're more of a move north-south team dynamic play. So they don't necessarily have a superstar on their team, and that's not to take away from some of the elite talent on that team. But what they know is how to put the puck in the net. They're also getting great goaltending, and their defense is probably very underrated. You look at someone like Jacob Slavin, who's one of the best two-way defensemen in the game. Like, he knows how to take the puck away. He rarely takes penalties, and he came up, and they know how to play the system. Now, credit to Spencer Carberry and the Washington Capitals. They trudged through. They had a great season, but I feel like age caught up to them. When you have someone like Ovechkin, who at 39, although he scored and beat Gretzky's record this year, he struggled a little bit in that season, and they shut him down, and rightfully so. He's having a hard time skating, right? John Carlson, great defenseman, Norris winner, but again, much older, closer to the end of his career, And so Carolina came out in droves. They have some young talent there, and so they were able to bring it about. You bring in Taylor Hall in that awkward Mikko Rantanen trade, and you sign him, and he's fit well in that system, even though he struggled with Chicago. So you have someone like that. You have these young guys like Jack Roslovic, who's coming in, and Logan Stankoven, who was part of that trade, and he's really fit into that system. He signs a big contract as soon as he gets there, and he's able to compete. And so credit where credit is due, but the Carolina Hurricanes know how to play hockey. And the biggest question every year they have is, where are the goals coming from? Well, now they have by committee. So that's what I've liked. But unfortunately, Washington, as great of a season as it was, it ended a bit shortly. So
yeah, and you know what? I completely agree with you there, because that's been the lingering question I've even asked about Carolina with that. But now, because they figured that out, it's now being a lot more simplified. And now going into the Eastern Conference Final, depending on how tonight goes, because we'll get into that as well, because again, I just think Carolina, from top to bottom on the roster, they have the pieces, because they're always seeming to make big moves. They're always seeming to get some core players. But I think this group really is interesting to watch, because we've been asking of, when will they ever get over that hump? And I think that's where Rod Brindamore really, really shows that type of adversity. So, okay. So we know that Toronto and Florida are playing right at this moment. Okay, last game, I did not like the effort from Toronto. And look, I thought it was completely embarrassing. But this is the thing, is Toronto, and last week I said on my show, I don't think I've ever said here that is the best looking Toronto team I've ever seen in quite some time. But because of that effort is the reason they make me question every year with this team. So they have to rebound here, Powell, because if they lose this game against Florida, it just goes to show you, and I love both coaches, Craig Berube and Paul Maurice, but I think Paul has more of that upper hand because of the camaraderie he has with Florida. I mean, does Toronto get it done, or does it kind of seem like that last game showed the cards that they're folding?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because they fought so hard this season for home ice advantage, which they got. They came in. There was some questions when they played Ottawa in, I believe it was game 4 or 5, and they looked a little shaky. Also a similar kind of letdown, but they got it done. I mean, I never thought that they couldn't. But you're going up against the former defending Stanley Cup champions. What's it called? The Florida Panthers. And when you look at their third line, where you have Brad Marchand, who came over from Boston, and you know he's a pest. You know Tkachuk is a pest, although he's not 100%. That team will wear you down, and that's what you need. You also had Bobrovsky kind of reeling. He kind of started slow, had a hard time, and now he gets into it. He's found his groove. He's really good. And so you got this team playing on all full cylinders. They're all competing. And Toronto, it starts with the top guys. And as much as it pains me to say, you got to have Matthews, who's your new captain this year, and Mitch Marner, who can be a 100-point player in the regular season, compete. But that backhand turnaround pass, whatever that was a you don't do that in the playoffs in the second round. You do that against the team in the bottom, like the San Jose Sharks. Sure, whatever. You do that maybe at the All-Star game. That's not where you do it. And I get it. He's a smaller guy. But I can name you several smaller guys in the league right now who compete. We were just talking about Carolina Hurricanes. Logan Stankoven. He's not a big guy, but he competes. He's not afraid to get hit. And when you have something like that, you need to be ready for games. I like Craig Berube. He looked shocked after the last game. Joseph Woll has done what he could. Of course, the Stolarz injury really did hurt their chances, but I believe in Woll. I think he still can play well. And, on their back end, you've got some big boys. Chris Tanev, he is the block expert. He can do whatever. You've got Jake McCabe, who is a physical presence, right? And Oliver Ekman-Larsson, who played last year for the Panthers, he's come in. He's been snarly. And for his price tag, he's great. But if Toronto doesn't have the top guys going, and I'm excluding Marner or Nylander from this because he has performed, then you're struggling because the rest of the lineup, what are you expecting from your Scott Laughtons on your third line, right? And potentially David Camps if he's playing center on the fourth line. That's what you need your guys to do. You need to have a good start. You need to put pucks on net. And maybe Matthews is still dealing with that injury from during the season where he went to Germany to get some tests done. But right now, it's a win or a die or must, right? This is their season on the line. I hope we do it. We get more hockey. Toronto fans can have another heyday of we did it, we're in it. The narrative shifts, and then game 7 would be on Sunday, which is a story in itself. As we know that one of the best marriages in sports is Toronto Maple Leafs in Game 7. So.
Yeah, right. Oh man, wouldn't that be quite a matchup? But no, I agree with you there. I've thought, because I watched those highlights of just their top 3 guys, they looked lost. It was just, what in the hell was going on? I was just shocked by it because, again, this is part of the reason Berube took the job, is because it was trying to get all of his ducks in a row and trying to keep him consistent. So we'll see. I mean, I'm pulling for him, but I would not be surprised if, Florida, they come out with a fast one and it's too much for Toronto to bear. So I know tomorrow night it's going to be fun. Winnipeg and Dallas. Dallas is playing with a chip on their shoulder, much as Winnipeg is, because Winnipeg last year, what I am actually happy that they overcame was because last year was by far the most horrible performance I've ever seen. I mean, 24 goals given up in the first round. That's unacceptable. And even for a Vezina Trophy winner like Connor Hellebuyck. But now you've got Dallas, who the question mark is all surrounding Pete DeBoer. And I like Pete. I know he brings that defensive identity, but tomorrow night is going to be a show. And I think because of the Jets really fighting physically in that game, this is winner take all at this point. Who do you truthfully see in this survival game? Do you see them making into the Western Conference?
I see Dallas. I had Dallas. They were originally my cup pick at the beginning of the year, just because of how deep they were up and down the bottom of the lineup. Also, I mean, they had to face Colorado in the first round. That's no easy feat. Hey, you're one of the best in the Central. Here's your competition, the Colorado Avalanche. So although they weren't first in the Central, that's not exactly a prize position you want to face. So I like Dallas. The problem with Winnipeg, I think, is they stink on the road. For some reason, they've had a hard time winning on the road. And at home, they're great. They looked great last night. They dominated. They were getting pucks out. They were killing penalties. They were being physical. Questionable call by Ben, who got a fine today for $5,000. I don't know why. It was a bit of a goony play, but I have Dallas because Mikko Rantanen has shown that right now he is the Conn Smythe favorite, the best valuable player in the NHL in the first 2 rounds so far. Now it's across, the whole playoffs, but you're looking at him. He had back-to-back hat tricks. Then you have, Mikael Granlund, who comes over in a trade from San Jose, also scores a hat trick, even though Rantanen had his own chances. And it shows like he's really taken his team on his shoulders and really been able to elevate his game, and people talked about how he fed off McKinnon, that dynamic that they had in Colorado, but he's really found his footing. He's a big guy. It's hard to get the puck off him, and he knows how to make certain passes that you're in awe when you watch it. So that's where I have that series. Although if Winnipeg is going to win, they got to play like they do at home. That's the only way they take this to game 7, and they do have home ice advantage. So game 7, it's not written in stone, but you write your own story.
100%. So I know you were excited about it. With now the Edmonton Oilers going back to the Western Conference Final for the second straight year. Look, and me being, a Vegas native, I've always, lived and breathed Golden Knights. But I've said this on the show yesterday, is I'm not worried about this team at all for several reasons, because number one, they have the coach, they have the culture, and they are also known for, when they lose something like that, they're going to want an acquisition in the offseason that's going to help to boost them up over the top. So this team's not going away for a long time. But I will say this. I felt like, and I thought this was kind of a perfect thing, and correct me on this, but Connor McDavid, he's arguably one of the best players I've ever seen just skate on the ice. He does everything right. And to me, I've always said this, that with McDavid's walk is similarly when it comes to Wayne Gretzky and even Michael Jordan, because these guys came into the league very impactful, but who did the Oilers have to deal with? The New York Islanders, who won 4 straight Stanley Cups, and then even with MJ, he had to deal with the Detroit Bad Boys and the Pistons. So to me, McDavid had to deal with a lot of shares of adversity for a long time. But Powell, I have never seen a more patient, a more in control, and probably a more impactful Edmonton Oilers team. And I think this is the stuff Connor McDavid has been harping about for a long time. Do you believe this looks like and seems like McDavid might actually fill that final spot in his trophy case?
I hope so. Nothing is ever guaranteed. And unlike other sports where oftentimes, like a Michael Jordan, can take over the game and really make an impact, I think it's a little harder in hockey, given that it is such a team dynamic sport and you live and die by, everyone. And if anything, the closest position that you can compare it to is the goalie, because, if your goalie goes down and you have poor goaltending, well, you live and die by that sword. This is possibly their opportunity. They had the experience. They've gone on a couple of deep runs, including last year, losing by 1 goal. But of course, Florida outbeat them because they have more depth, and they did last year, right? And that scoring kind of dried up in that last game. I do hope that McDavid gets a Cups, because I don't want to say he deserves it, but he is that impactful in the game, and he's beaten everything else. And I think he has a chance to do it because of how well the team is playing. Now, anything can happen, a bad bounce here, an injury there, and all of a sudden you're looking at the barrel of your series ending, and then you're done, and then you got to wait another full calendar year before you get back to it. But if they continue to play the same complete game that they did last game, or second last game, I believe it was game 4 where they won 3-0 versus Vegas, then I think they have a chance to go to the promised land. Now, I would compare it, if people know basketball terms, to Dirk Nowitzki when he ran his championship and what he had to go through, all the adversity. Yeah. And nobody believed that he can do it, right? Now we know he's a Hall of Famer for sure. But Dirk, nobody expected him to go through all those teams, including Miami, I believe it was, and just dominate the way he did. And so that's the way I see it. He has an opportunity to make a legacy for himself this year. That being said, there's always a team on the other side doing the exact same thing. And his name is Mikko Rantanen. He's going to try to do the same if the Dallas Stars move ahead. If it's not them and it's Winnipeg, it's going to be Connor Hellebuyck trying to cement his legacy as one of the best goalies ever, including being the best American goalkeeper in the NHL.
Man, I'm excited for, the conference finals because once you get right there closer to the finish line, because I said it on the show, like the hardest trophy in America is to winning the Stanley Cup because you're getting beaten, you're getting battered. And at the same time, it's well worth taking the scars and drinking out of the cup. That's really, I love that Dirk Nowitzki analogy. I like that. So, what's interesting about this? So the draft lottery, in my opinion, and I live here up in Colorado, and all we have is the Colorado lottery, right? It's all scratch ticket. This is what I feel like the NHL and the NBA draft lottery is a scratch ticket because you have your probability numbers where you think those teams have the higher odds, but that's not going to matter. So 0.3% that the New York Islanders get the number 1 overall pick is just unheard of. But then you look at what just happened in the NBA. You traded away Luka to the LA, and now Dallas, this is probably the 4th, 5th time in 15 years in the NBA that they get it, and everybody's like, oh, it's rigged, it's all the but that's a scratch ticket. These probabilities don't matter until you actually see what happens. So what were your thoughts on the NHL draft lottery? Because to me, what I expect in the offseason, and I'm not sure if you feel the same, but I expect the Islanders to get busy this offseason. And I'm feeling like there's going to be some trade moves. To be honest with you, I thought JG Padgett would have worked. It's not. I think you honestly move off that. I think, too, you make a couple of other moves. You already did one with Brock Nelson. Now what are you going to do about Bo Horvat and some of these others? You already moved off some of the core pieces. I just think they're going to be the busiest team up on the moves because they got a new GM. You're trying to build everything around with Patrick Waugh to make this work. What did you think about that lottery?
For sure. So I did like that they won because it goes to show you that depending on where you finish, you still have an opportunity to go number 1, right? So moving for next year, if you're a team that's looking at getting generational potential talent, Gavin McKenna, who we've talked about quite often, teams may not do so well in the season and maybe hold on to their first round pick. Now, the Islanders have had first round picks in the past. Their GM search is still ongoing technically. So whoever's going to take that job in, it's going to be very lucrative because you've got some business to attend to. Plus, you get to pick someone like a Matthew Schaefer or a Michael Misa who has been good. But you also have someone named James Higgins, who is from the Long Island area. Now, he's not touted as number 1. But do you go for a homegrown guy? Because that's sometimes something you see, right? You look at Mitch Marner with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so if you go down enough, social media, Reddit, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, you'll definitely find conspiracy theorists about, this is rigged, this is not rigged. Fair enough. I'm sure there's some questionable things. And the only one that I heard is because the Islanders were going to get the All-Star game next year, right? In Long Island. But of course, the Olympics are happening. So, long and behold, they get the first round pick. It's not hard to connect those two dots. It's going to be not the deepest draft, but a pretty solid draft with depth players. You don't have a clear number 1 generational talent like a McDavid, like a Austin Matthews who's come through, but someone who's going to make an impact right away. And so I think the job is going to be a lot because the Islanders aren't that far off from making the playoffs, and their biggest concern is goal scoring. What's the biggest thing you want to pay for? You need goal scoring. So who are you going to go for? And when you look at someone like a Misa or a Matthew Schaefer, they know how to put, more so Misa knows how to put up goals. He had 62 in 65 games. That's pretty impressive, right? They struggled this year with Anthony Duclair, who took some time off for personal health reasons. You got to re-sign your RFA Noah Dobson, who's out there, and he's going to be able to, he's going to be able to be traded because he's definitely going to bring you some value. Again, it's what is the direction of your team? And I know that Ken Holland, who's now out in LA, he interviewed for the job, but the way that talks have been happening, and from our sources for 2 guys is that it's more of a longer tiered deal. So they want to build up a little bit more of their capital, their draft assets, and their prospect pool, and then go in so that they're competitive for a longer time in the next 2 to 4 years, right? Rather than be immediately good. Now, it can always change and things can improve in one season, of course. But I think that's kind of the mentality that the Islanders are bringing out. But that's the thing with the draft, it brings excitement and buzz. And if people recall, John Tavares was the last guy who was number 1 and picked by the Long Island. You also may know this guy named Rick DiPietro, this allegedly legendary goaltender who no longer is in the NHL, but his contract still goes, I believe, till 2029, 2030. So he's still getting paid like an elite goaltender, but he's not playing at all.
Yeah, no, I agree. When I look at this draft, it almost reminds me of the time when Matty Beniers first came in. It kind of reminds me of that draft because we knew what he was. I mean, he's a very good elite goal scorer when you get him going. And that's why Seattle, them drafting him, I think was the perfect fit because now you got your elite scorer for the future. So that's why I feel like this kind of draft is because last year it seemed like it was more roster constructed than anything else because you needed some important pieces to fill in. But 2 fiery questions to get here before letting you go. So, all right, we got hockey in Utah officially, and now we got a name, the Utah Mammoth. Living here in Colorado, and I'm very surprised that we haven't had a team in Utah from the jump because I feel like they have similar climates to Colorado. I mean, it snows, it's beautiful weather. I've camped out there down up in Cedar City, St. George area. And I love every moment of it. I mean, but I love the fact that they are built for success because of the ownership that they are owned by. I mean, the way they've treated the Jazz, they love their fan base. They make it reasonable. So, what should we expect from the Utah Mammoth now? I mean, when I saw the name and the colors, man, it's hard to compete with that.
100%. So they've released their jerseys. It looks great. I was always a fan, as I've talked on the show, of Utah Outlaws. I thought that was a pretty cool name. Of course, Yeti didn't pan out because of another corporation that owned that name and didn't want to share the rights. Rightfully so. The legality. Don't ask me. I'm not a lawyer. I just look like one. But essentially, the team has been successful. They did miss the mark this year in the playoffs, but I feel like they can be competitive. I know Ryan Smith wants to be competitive. They are improving the arena because there were some areas that were a little bit limited in terms of views and where you're sitting, because of course it is an NBA league and they are planning to build NHL hockey rink there. The work essentially has been started on that. There's boots on the ground. The team is exciting. They did some great business last year, bringing in Sergachev from the Tampa Bay Lightning, who apparently has it's a fun little story that he has a bit of a chicken farm. And so during a bit of a shortage of eggs in the U.S., he ended up giving a lot of eggs to a lot of his teammates, because they're like, oh, you need eggs? I bring you eggs, so very Russian of him. Yeah. So that was a pretty cool story, but I like what they're doing. They're going to have some cool designs with their jerseys. It'll be interesting to see what their alternative will be, if they'll have any kind of nod, not only to Salt Lake or the Jazz or even the old Arizona team, because of course that team still technically exists, but maybe they're going to acknowledge their kind of quote unquote history. And, they should compete for a playoff spot next year for sure. They have that goal, and don't be surprised if they make a push for Mitch Marner, if not another big forward like a Sam Bennett, because they're going to want scoring and they want to go deep next year and make the postseason. Because I can imagine how excited Utah fans would be with the team in the postseason next season.
Oh, 100%. So, all right. So we got new coaches now in different places. So Adam Foote, we got in Vancouver. I actually kind of low-key like that move because I felt like Vancouver, sadly, had a drop-off year. And, because this team, they came into the playoffs. It seemed like they were going to honestly be the hot team going in. But after that, they kind of blew themselves out of the water. And then finally, Philadelphia, they get Rick Tocchet. I'm curious how that's going to look like because knowing Philadelphia, you can't underachieve. And if you do, you're going to be talked about an awful lot and not nicely either if you're outside of the Eagles. But then there's a hiring I absolutely love, and I'm sure you do too. Mike Sullivan to New York.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. when Peter Laviolette got hired, I was like, this roster is going to dismantle. And the only reason of it is because, look, I like Gerard Gallant. I think he was a very hyper-aggressive scoring coach. I also do think that he possesses that. But the problem is, it's the puck and go situation. That can't, you can't go in there with a really good defense and keep doing this puck and go situation. Now you've left your goaltending vulnerable. I think that was the one knock on him. But Laviolette, it just seems like he does not kind of bring that oomph with offense. I saw this with Nashville. So Mike Sullivan, though, with this roster build, I think could be potentially, if everything falls into place, this could be a cup contending team.
I agree. I was surprised that the Rangers failed as they did because their season was a lot of ups and downs.
Yeah.
And again, they have one of the best goalies in the world, Shesterkin. He knows how to play. He signs that big contract. So hopefully that stress is gone there. You have Artemi Panarin coming up at the end of his contract. He's got one more year left, and he fell kind of into their laps. So, you take that chance and you are competitive. Your older guys are, not going to continue to play younger. So you look at a Chris Kreider, who isn't as effective as he was previously, and he has been a good power play specialist there. But you look at someone like Alex Lafreniere, who was a number one pick a couple of years ago, and he's really found his game, and you really want him to be successful. Now, they did trade away for JT Miller and moved Philip Hedl. Philip Hedl, I like him as a player. The problem is he's had too many concussions. I don't know how much longer he's going to stick around in the league, given that history. He struggled even staying in the lineup for Vancouver. But this should be a playoff roster. Now, they could tweak around it here and there, but you really need to figure things out. The other person that I would mention, who, of course, it was fun to talk about, but Matt Rempe really needs to take a step back because we know someone, Alex Thomas, who's a play-by-play for the farm team there. And he talked about how Rempe can play. He can skate. He can be physical. He can put the puck in the net. But the problem is this goon antics. I get that that's one of the reasons he stayed up so long. But there's more to that game, right? And so you need to be able to compete. And so I like the hire of Mike Sullivan. I know that he has some family. I believe it's his daughter in the region, which is one of the reasons why he picked it there. And how could you not want a coach that continually coached Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, and Chris Letang, but also kept that team competitive when they should have faltered a while back, right? And needed to rebuild probably 3 to 4 years ago. They're just a little bit behind schedule. So I like the hiring. I like Adam Foote. You're always going to find people, it's a new guy. He has no experience. Well, do you want to recycle another coach? Do you want to bring in Peter Laviolette there in Vancouver? I don't think that'd be a good fit, and you want someone who's excited as well as is calm. When Adam Foote is very calm. He had a great career, including when he won with the Colorado Avalanche in 96 and 2001, but he knows how to play the game, and Quinn Hughes is a fan. And right now the Vancouver fan base needs to make that man happy because, of course, Rutherford's coming. We're a little bit odd saying, he's going to bring the brothers over, which sounded borderline tampering. Yeah. But essentially what it comes down to is you want to make Quinn Hughes and the rest of the guys happy. You bring in somebody to give him an opportunity. And you know why? Because you look at Edmonton when you bring in Chris Knobloch from the Hartford Wolfpack, as we talked about a little bit earlier, and look at the success he's had with Edmonton, right? So you never know what you're going to get. You got to give guys a chance. So that's what I like. As for Rick Tocchet, I've had some conversations with some fans in Philadelphia. He's not going to be that much different from Torts. He just doesn't yell as much. That's probably the only thing, right? And I know he was really loved, or people really love Brad Shaw there, the interim coach. But essentially, I think they're looking for a homegrown guy who played for that team, really knows how to compete. My question with Philadelphia is are you really going to push over the edge? Because I think they're still kind of on the outside looking in. I still think they have a year or two away before they're competitive in the playoffs. I don't see Philadelphia making the postseason next year.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to take a little bit of time because, if it wasn't for, this Carter Hart thing and then a couple of other players that they did not end up getting and addressing, it's still going to take them a little bit of time. But I'm really hoping because if we get teams like the Flyers that get into the playoffs, it makes hockey interesting and it makes sports interesting. And, we'll be talking about it for the next several weeks. So, I'm excited for next season, but I do love these coaching hires. I think Adam Foote, you hit it on the nail. I think he's very calm, and I really love to see what Vancouver, how they bounce back and how they really look like.
Now, if I could quickly ask you, if
Yeah.
someone were to put a metaphorical gun to your head, who is your Stanley Cup final prediction right now with the teams that are left?
Oh my God. A low key, I think I would probably go Dallas and Carolina, only because it just seems to me Mikko Rantanen. The book is perfect because you just proved to Colorado. Oh my God, I can't stand these Denver sports guys because they're freaking out over that whole trade. I told him, I said, take a deep breath. The best thing that happened is he didn't sign a contract extension with Carolina. So he gets traded there. They signed him to this premium deal. But think about it. You just beat Colorado. You got the last laugh. Why wouldn't you want to beat Carolina in the big stage and get the last laugh there? That's an interesting one. But if I wanted an honorable mention, I really hope Edmonton does make it, only because I just have that soft spot for Connor McDavid. I really do. But yeah. But no, it's so good to have you up onto the show, Powell. Love your guys' work there up on Two Guys in Hockey Talk. And I know you guys have been amped up all season long, and I've seen all the clips. You guys are doing an amazing job from there. Appreciate you for coming on by, man. Enjoy tonight and enjoy the rest of the weekend, and we shall see what the conference finals are literally going to shape like. Take care of yourself, my friend.
Thank you. Cheers. Have a great
Cheers.
night.
You too. All right, now I got to bring my guy up in here, Jason. All right, breaking news. I listen. Before you came on, I had to be honest. I have no room to lie, because this is why San Francisco really should have thought about drafting Shedeur Sanders. Because I'm not saying Purdy didn't deserve his payday. Okay, I get the accolades. I get the successes. I mean, he hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, but I think a lot of that is because he's accounted for Kyle Shanahan's offense. However, we know about these quarterbacks that get paid the big bucks. Year one, they drop off very easily. And the Niners have such a cupcake schedule. So to me, that cupcake schedule that you're seeing on paper kind of makes me look and feel different.
Unless you're the likes of Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen, the guys who can actually perform with the big money, then, I mean, unless you're the big four, there's no way you're going to perform. I mean, Justin Herbert had just a slight fall off. Granted, it's because of the coaching and everything, and I'll give it that.
But he was also injured at the tail end. Yeah,
he still had a fall off and everything. But, like, unless you are the big four, if you want to include him in the big five, there's no way that you are going to perform well after a big contract extension. I think Jalen Hurts is the exception only because he had a super team around him. And if it wasn't for that super team, he would not have been anywhere near as good as what he was. And I'm not buying the Jalen Hurts hype. I'm really not. Like, look at the team that he had around him this year. Like, you could have put Trent Dilfer behind that offensive line and then that offense, and they would have won the Super Bowl.
Brad Johnson with what
you could have put Brad Johnson. You could have put Johnny Manziel from the Cleveland Browns behind that team, and they would have won the Super Bowl. Because you can't sit here and tell me that the defensive line that they had and the linebacking core and the freaking they had the best offensive line in the league and arguably the best running back. Like, Jalen Hurts did not have to do much of anything to win at all in the playoffs. And it took the Rams down to the last minute of the game to almost beat them. Like, they were the ones that almost beat them in the playoffs, and we would have had the Chiefs-Rams Super Bowl. No, I'm not buying the whole Jalen Hurts hype, but unless you're the big four, you are not going to perform well with a big contract. When I saw that contract come across my feed, I'm like, $53 million a year? Yeah. Are you kidding me?
But this is what we talked about, and think about it: $181 million guaranteed. So San Francisco, what I feel like went down is that this was by far a team-friendly guarantee. It really is, if you actually look at it from the financial breakdown. However, did we not learn this from Dallas last year when they paid Dak? And what happened in this offseason. Both him and CeeDee Lamb had to restructure. So San Francisco, I feel like, is going to get to that position. They're going to have a reality check. And I think that's where Purdy will end up restructuring because he needs to have a better roster around him. Okay, look, I question the offensive line because Trent Williams is not going to last for very long. He's going to eventually retire. Who knows if Christian
and
McCaffrey
the rest of it is just dog shit.
And who knows if Christian McCaffrey comes back the same after that injury. And then at the same time, same with Brandon Ayuk. I mean, I'm excited for Ricky Pearsall and Juwan Jennings, but Kittle's also, I mean, they paid Kittle. So, I just don't know. I mean, this is arguably the easiest schedule, but I just don't think it's going to feel like.
Let's take a look at their schedule, shall we?
Oh, I have it right here. I could actually look it up. So their schedule, it goes as this. So, okay, so I apologize for my radio audience from here, but for my audience watching the show, so this is what it looks like. So you've got.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you see what I'm talking about? Does that not?
Oh, Jesus
favorable?
Christ! Week
This
2,
looks-
week
yes.
2 is almost a guaranteed win just because of how bad they are.
Now remember this though, because I feel like Seattle on the road, you're going there. I think Seattle takes week 1, and you go and win against New Orleans. I don't know about that Cardinals game.
No,
At
you
home,
lose against the Cardinals.
I think you win against the Jags because to me,
Is that game in London?
that game, I believe it might be, or it might be up in Santa Clara.
Then I'm picking the Jags because the Jags don't lose in London.
Oh, they never seem to do. I think they'll lose on the road in LA because I just think the Rams, they're just built that way. They'll lose against the Bucks, probably win an ugly game against Atlanta, lose to the Texans, probably beat the Giants. And
they'll
to
split
me,
with the Rams. I see them splitting one with the Rams. They always do.
yeah. And then I think they go on the road to Arizona and they get their get back. I think they split with the Cardinals. They'll beat the Panthers. I see them losing to Cleveland, and the only reason of it is because that front of Cleveland is going to give the offensive line some problems. I don't know how they're going to play. They're going to pan out on that, but they have the bye week.
Last time we got a lot of pressure on Purdy when he was in Cleveland because when it's on the right side, that's the home game, or is that the away game?
Yeah, so it's the right side that we know is kind of the problem. So, and then
I'm saying like with like looking at them, if the Niner symbol's on the right side, are they home or away?
So, they're on the road. They're on the road.
So if they go to Cleveland, the last time they were in Cleveland, like Myles Garrett got to Brock Purdy and that defense did, and that entire team basically shut down Christian McCaffrey.
Yes, and so mind you, this is week 13 as well. That month, that's going to get cold out there in Cleveland, and that's not going to be favorable there in San Francisco. I'm not saying they can't
since he was an Iowa State quarterback and he's not used to the cold.
Well, the thing is too is I just think it might be a little bit challenging up from there. But again, with Mason Graham and Myles Garrett, I don't know if you're going to honestly contain those two up front. They're going to figure that out very quickly. That's not going to be the way you want to go into a bye week. But then you got Tennessee, the Colts, the Bears, and then Seattle. I see them splitting with Seattle, but
I see a 7-10 record here.
I kind of do too. And you know what? To me, I feel like it could be 7-10, 8-9. And the only reason, because I just think whatever happens with as far as this contract is concerned, I just think like if Purdy's not healthy all season long, then that could be an issue. Inconsistency is also something that happens. But if you also have key injuries to some of your key spots, San Francisco, you really got to have that serious question. But yeah.
My dog disappeared. It's kind of worrying me right now because she's just so quiet. And like when she's quiet, she's getting into something.
Well, you see, my dog is literally sitting right there. And
she's here.
Dude. All right.
You could be getting in the cat litter box. I don't trust you. Like we got a cat too. My wife's a cat person. I'm a dog person. I like dogs better.
Dogs. I used to have a cat. I used to have cat before he passed, and he lived for like 17, almost nearly 18 years.
But my dog is known to get in the litter box. Judy, come here. I don't trust her, man. I don't trust her at all.
Yeah. Well,
come here.
Well, I will say, all right. So I don't have the I don't have the actual graphic up and on me, but we've been talking about this, Chase and I, with as far as now that we've got the schedules, now that we've already gotten through free agency, still kind of going on here and there, and we got the draft over with. Now we get a chance to basically break down divisions, wild cards, and see what the shape of the playoffs is going to look like. So, in my opinion, we'll go to the NFC, and then we'll go into the AFC. So the NFC,
or are we just doing the records?
So we're basically, because we'll fill out the records and all the rest of it later on. But this is kind of where I have this set for now, with just as division winners and then all the way down. So Let's start with the NFC West. It's clearly obvious. I think the Los Angeles Rams, they win this division because Devontae Adams, Poona Ford, they addressed a couple of pieces. Now, I don't know about the draft per se, but they did end up getting a tight end, Terrence Ferguson, to really help out with Tyler Higbee. But I think the Rams are truthfully going all in on this because they know there's only a certain window with Matthew Stafford. So if you're going to make this right, I think the Rams, they win this division. This might surprise you, but I think the Seahawks could make a 9-8 case right here. I think they might be second in the division. The only reason is because they addressed offensive line. They went and got a quarterback with Sam Darnold. But the other thing is that defensively, you could see Mike McDonald's identity written all over this thing. Loves trench warfare defense, but he also is going to be working with those two of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, but they also got that low-key, underrated running back from Miami. He looks nice. So to me, I think Seattle has a case to be a competitive 9-8 team. Depending on the playoff structure, I'm not sure, but I truthfully think Seattle will make a case to go second in the division. I think San Francisco, they're going to be a third place team only because I just know with Brock Purdy's contract situation, this happens all the time with quarterbacks. Once you get the first year of the bag, you tend to go on a drop-off the first year, whether inconsistency, injuries to either the quarterback or case pieces. I mean, again, I like the 49ers, but this is why I wish they would have drafted Shedeur Sanders for this reason. So that way they would have had a quarterback right from there. I'm not dissing Purdy and what he has done, but let's be honest here. I think if you watch Kyle Shanahan with an over-the-top quarterback, then I think we could come to a conclusion. He can compete with that kind of quarterback, but I don't know. It seems like Kyle Shanahan kind of stands in his own way. And finally, I've got the Cardinals, again, going into fourth place, but they will be a competitive fourth place team. Let's not get that, misconstrued, because they did address a lot of defensive players. They really, really did. I like when they got Will Johnson. I like how they end up getting a couple pieces a little bit in the middle and late rounds. But the thing is, the question mark is, what will Marvin Harrison look like in year 2? Has he fixed a little bit of that and now meshed into being in the league in his second year? That tends to happen for receivers. Will Kyler Murray be focused again to where he could honestly make this team better? I just think the Cardinals need another year where they could shape this puppy up, and I think they'll be in much better shape. So Rams, Seahawks, 49ers, and then the Cardinals to top it off. Let's go to the NFC North now. Okay, so this is interesting to me. To me, this is the one that was just really hard for me to even, put together and really kind of see. But I really think the Green Bay Packers win this division. The only reason is because if we've learned anything, just like C.J. Stroud, Jordan Love is going to learn from a lot of what happened last year. And I think he'll be better with that. Now, they did get Matthew Golden. They got another receiver. defensively, I am a little bit questioned and concerned about it. But however,
no depth for Jair because of how injury prone he's been.
Yeah, and so that's the other thing too. And Jair's taking a pay cut. So it seems to me he's not moving anywhere. They're going to keep him there for one more year. But I think they really got to get strong and heavy on defense. So maybe they might go on to the trade deadline. I think this could be kind of an 11-6 type team, in my opinion, with just this, like they did last year. But I feel confident about this 11-6 team than I did of last year's 11-6 team. The second place team, I really feel like it could be the Minnesota Vikings. And the only reason of that, I think they tie up with this. It'll be a fight to the very end of the NFC North. But I think the Packers have the last lap. But Minnesota, with J.J. McCarthy, this roster, and everything that's been put together, Minnesota has, and I'm excited about the run game with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. That one's going to be one I would love to watch with the two of them. But I do think this roster is competitive enough, and I also do think they will address the safety position because we know Harrison Smith is going to retire at some point, but I think they did address a lot of the key areas, especially offensive line. The Chicago Bears, I can see finishing third place, and I think they could make a case. They could actually end up going 10 wins, 10-7. The only reason of that is because Ben Johnson is showing you exactly his identity. He wants a really good dual threat run game. He also wants a very good stacked offensive line. And now you got to now make Caleb Williams work. This is why you went and got Colston Loveland. This is why you ended up getting another player. So Ben Johnson's identity is in there. And just like we talked about, we know the defense will always be there, but we got to focus on the offense. And I think that's exactly what Ben Johnson is doing with the coordinators, with these plethora of players. I think Chicago actually turns a lead. And look, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't know how I feel about Detroit in this one. I mean, I know it might hurt, but I feel like Detroit, after getting gutted the way that they did, I love their potential. But however, I just don't know how I feel with losing these coordinators. So I've got Packers, Vikings, Bears, and the Lions from top to bottom. Wow. Now, unless, because there's been reports about the Trey Hendrickson deal, if they get him, there might be a case that the Lions would actually be okay. They'll be okay for me. But as it stands, that's my honest opinion. The NFC East, boy, is this hard. But we have not had a division winner back-to-back in 22 years. But I do feel like, and this might shock people, the Philadelphia Eagles are not going to win the division. I really do feel like this could be an opportunity and a year for the Washington Commanders to win this division. And the only reason is because we saw with what Jaden Daniels is. I think he's a very competent quarterback. I also do believe that the pieces they've added, like Deebo Samuel, he complements this team so well. And it's just exactly what Jaden Daniels does. Snap and go, and then dump offs. It's perfect for someone like Deebo Samuel. And it's perfect to stretch to go and get more yardage. So I think the Commanders will win. You know what I feel like? This could be exactly with what Ohio State had to go through when Oregon won the Big Ten, right? But it didn't matter because Ohio State went into the playoffs, and then they went on and win the Natty. I think Philadelphia does the same thing here. They don't care about that division. I think initially they're going to be a playoff threat, and that's clearly what they care about. So I would have the Eagles at second because, to me, this always happens with Super Bowl champion teams, is that eventually they pull back. I said it to people, I think the Eagles go 11-6 with their schedule. I don't think they pull off what they did last year because they were on fire and they had all the right pieces and they were all at like full swing. I think this year they get battle tested. And I think that's the reason they probably will finish second. Third would be the Dallas Cowboys, but it's a much better group. It's a better group. I think they're capable of winning 10 games. I really do after they got George Pickens. But this is a building roster that is only retooling right now. So I think the Dallas Cowboys, new coach, new offense.
The coach is going to be the key. It's going to be key to see. Like if they had Mike McCarthy still, I would say that they are probably the division winners, maybe if not second place. But without him, like who knows what Brian's going to be like.
No, yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that's why, like Dallas, and we know this sometimes too, if one year, and in fact, Mike McCarthy's had 2 years where it did not end up working out. Because remember, he had that 4-12 season, the 4-13 season, and then they went 12-5, 12-5. So to me, I think Brian Schottenheimer, because of the way that this team dropped off last year with that massive contract, I think this is the opportunity where they can actually trend up. And then finally, I think the New York Giants, I don't think they're there yet, but they will be a competitive defensive team. I love their front. I also do think it's interesting to watch their quarterbacks because Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston, and they drafted Jackson Dart. I think at the end of the day, if the Giants are 8-9 in the NFC East, Dable's job is safe.
Yep.
Yes, and so that's why you want to be competitive. So I will take that. And then, no, I'm going to go into next year, and now I got to now bounce. I got to now start to make a big leap.
And Jackson Dart will be the starter, and then they will go into next season where they are going to build that offense. Like it is going to
offensive lineman, please.
And not just an offensive lineman. They're going to get a wide receiver. They're like, okay, we need to get somebody opposite of Malik Neighbors.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. With Tyron Tracy paired up with Cam Scatterbo, I think that's going to be nice. And you know what? They're bringing back some old nostalgia. So I think Commanders, Eagles, Cowboys, Giants right there. Finally, the NFC.
I like it.
Yeah, I do too. The NFC South. So as wonky as this division is, I don't really know what to think of it, in my opinion, but I still believe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would win this division. Baker Mayfield had nearly MVP numbers last year, and they gave him more weapons again this year, and the defense is still continuing to get younger. So, Tampa, I mean, they are a smart organization. I trust Jason Licht, and I do trust that Todd Bowles is going to figure this out. Now, again, it may not be as what it was last year. I think they might kind of be like a 10-7. This is going to be hard for Tampa Bay. But I do think there's going to be a huge competitive gap right there for the next few weeks on their schedule. So I have Tampa going first. Surprisingly, well, I think the Atlanta Falcons, I think the Falcons will finish second up here in this one. So Michael Penix, the thing that I'm interested in seeing, now they did lose Drew Dalman, the center. I know that's a question mark, but the thing is, they got a pass rusher, but Atlanta might end up being 9-8 for the simple fact and the simple reason that this team just needs to find consistency. They'll be 9-8, finishing second in the division, but I think with Michael Penix, I mean, I love with what I see with him. He's the most NFL pro-ready quarterback I think I've ever seen throw. Carolina will finish third in this one because Bryce Young. Now, they finished with 6 wins, if I'm not mistaken. Last year, they finished with 6. I have them finishing with
7,
8.
I think, but I'm not sure.
Okay, but I have them finishing with 8, if that's the case. But that's the most competitive number, only because Bryce Young looks more competitive. You also got him another weapon with Ted McMillan, and you got a couple
and Jimmy Horn Jr., a speedster.
Yeah, so I think this is actually pretty good for a jump up here with Carolina.
From Notre Dame as well.
Yep. So I think Carolina
with Jatavion Sanders from Texas, their tight end that they had. So
I think this is honestly going to be a fun team to watch this year. because
they're going to go in with 6 wide receivers. It's going to be Tedrow McMillan. It's going to be Jalen Coker. Going to be Adam Thielen. Probably Hunter Renfrow. Then you're going to have
Xavier Legette.
And then the final one would be Jimmy Horn Jr.
Yeah. So that's why
wide receivers right there.
Yeah, and that's plenty of help. So that's an opportunity for them to really kind of make that jump.
And I like a receiving core where, you know, I've got Tedrow McMillan on the outside, Xavier Legette on the outside, and then Hunter Renfrow up the middle. And then Adam Thielen can be like a trade-off guy where he comes in every other offensive series since he's older.
Exactly. And finally, I have the Saints finishing fourth here. And the only reason I think the Saints, I think they're capable. I think they'll probably either finish 7-10 or 6-11. And the only reason of that is because to me, Kellen Moore, I know, is going to instill a different type of offensive scheme. I know that without a doubt. However, the quarterback situation, because I know everybody is harping about Tyler Shuck. But I love what they did with their offensive line with Talis Fuaga, and they also got the other offensive tackle as well. So they solidified their offensive tackle side. But I do gotta see if whatever happens with Alvin Kamara, I gotta see with what Chris Olave looks like and with Rashid Shaheed. So there's parts of that offense I'm a little concerned about, but the defense, here's the other thing that also is true. I love their secondaries, but Chase, that front, it looks old. And that's the part I'm a little concerned about, because if you're going to play games where it's going to be brutal run games, especially teams that are out there that fix their running back position, I mean, you're going to tell me Chuba Hubbard and Bijan Robinson, you really think that you got that defensive front to stop those in your division?
One thing I do like that the Saints have been doing, and it's going to be great for whoever their franchise quarterback is going to be next year, and that is building the offensive line. They got Fuaga last year to be their right tackle. They got Peter Skoronski 2 years ago, who they thought was going to be their left tackle, is now their left guard. And then this year they get Calvin Banks Jr., like arguably the best left tackle in this draft, but like, you know, he, if not definitely top 3, top 4 left tackle in this draft. So now you've got your left tackle solidified, your right tackle solidified, and your left guard solidified. Now all you need to do is just find your center and find your right guard. And this is going to be a top-tier offensive line for whoever comes in next year. And that's the one thing I like that the Saints have been doing right for them.
Yeah. Oh, I completely agree. So these are my division winners in the NFC. So I have the Commanders, the Packers, the Buccaneers, and the Rams winning the division. So those are the 4 sets. Now the 3 wild card teams from here. I've got the Vikings being a wild card team. I've got the Eagles as a wild card team. Now this is also kind of one that was really hard. But I honestly do think this is the year we might actually see. It's going to be a toss-up between the Bears and Cowboys in that last wild card spot, only because I think the Bears really have improved. But again, the Cowboys are also in the same similar situation. Now, again, I don't think it's a bad thing if the Cowboys miss the playoffs again and then go in and then they're going to upgrade their firepower again next year. But
yeah, I can see that happening.
Yeah, I see that too, and I think that's.
And I see them moving on from Dak next year.
That's also another possibility too, because we know looking into the draft, that could be something interesting for the Cowboys to watch out for.
Especially since it's a heavily quarterback populated draft next year. So
exactly. So now, the AFC. So
I'll go through my NFC ones real quick. Just a rapid fire.
Go ahead.
We've got for me winning like the East Division. I'm gonna go with the Commanders winning the division.
Okay.
The Eagles finishing in second, Cowboys third, and then the Giants last. We all agree on that one there. And I think the Cowboys could be a 10-win team. It just depends. It all is going to depend on what Brian does and how well he is as a head coach. That's the deciding factor in that. Then we're gonna move to the NFC West. I actually have this different than what you do. I've got the Rams finishing in first, Cardinals finishing in second, Seahawks finishing in third and the Niners finishing in last.
Wow.
I watched the Arizona Cardinals play at least 6 games last year, and there was a lot of games that they had that were very, very close that could have went either way. One game in particular was that Chargers game. That was a very close game where it went down to the wire, and it like a couple plays here and there. And I think with the upgrades of having Will Johnson in the back end,
limited them to not even scoring a touchdown.
Yeah,
like that was a trap game for the Chargers. That was.
Yep, I think adding Will Johnson on that defensive side, and then Walter Nolan, a run stopper up the middle, one of the better defensive tackles in this draft, and I think just building that defensive side of the ball. I really truly think that Jonathan Gannon is going to bring the best out of this defense, and it's going to be a force to be reckoned with, and that's going to be what's carrying the Cardinals into a wild card playoff spot. And we'll talk about that later when I mention my wild card teams.
Okay.
Potential wild card spot. Potential. We're going to move on to the NFC South. I actually have the Panthers winning this division. I have the Panthers winning the division just because I went back and I looked through the Panthers draft. They drafted Nick Scorton in the second round on their defense. They drafted Cam Jackson, the defensive tackle out of Florida. They drafted Princely Umanmielen, and then they drafted Elatham Ransom for their back end as a secondary player, a good safety from Ohio State. And then they drafted a couple more defensive pieces. But I think that with Bryce Young, with the way that he was playing this past year with Chuba Hubbard, and also with Jalen Coker making a name for himself and Xavier Legette, coming into his own and everything, I think with the much better upgraded weapons, McMillan, then you got Legette, you got Coker, you also got Hunter Renfrow. If he's the Hunter Renfrow that we saw on the Raiders, it's going to be a great force to be reckoned with. There is going to be nobody, even including the Bucs, that's going to stop that defense. Now, I got the Falcons coming in second in that division, getting guys like Jalon Walker and James Pierce Jr. I think that, the Falcons have been looking for edge rushers and have been looking for something that can put them over the top defensively, and I think that they got the two pieces that are going to carry it there. And I do think that another reason why I got the Panthers winning this division is it's all going to depend on how Bryce Young is. If he can come out like he played in the second half of the season at the beginning, oh yeah, they're going to win this division. I got the Bucs finishing in third in that division. I know that everybody's really high on Baker. I love Baker. I've got nothing against him. I think he's a really good quarterback. But the one thing I've noticed since his time with the Browns and everything is that he falls off towards the end of the season. Like he starts getting into a rut where it doesn't look as well as it did at the beginning, and he kind of shot himself in the foot when it came time for playoffs. And then the last, obviously, it's going to be the Saints, and I think that they are going to be a 3 or 4 win team. I do not see them winning 6 games. I think that they are just going to be the worst team in the league this year, just because brand new coach, aging roster, and a undecisive quarterback room that you don't know what's going to happen with them. They could have the number 1 overall pick this year, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Then we're going to move on to the NFC North. Now, here's where you and I disagree with. I think that we are going to have the Minnesota Vikings finishing in first place in that division, taking that division just because, I explained it yesterday how they've got almost basically no holes on their roster, and they've got everything built, and it's going to all depend on how JJ plays. And I think having a year off learning the NFL, learning the playbook, and seeing how it plays, there's a lot of times that we've seen in the NFL history where a quarterback sits and learns, ends up coming in and playing well the very next year, and I see JJ doing that. Then in second place, I actually have the Lions finishing in second place. I know that we talked about having 6 coaches gone and how much of a difference that can make, but I also went back and looked at their draft. The things that I like that they did, they drafted offensive linemen, but they drafted 2 guards. I don't know why they did that, but they also ended up grabbing another wide receiver because I feel like they're going to trade Jameson Williams because they're done with him. And then they also drafted 3 defensive pieces that could fit big on this roster. Talik Williams, great defensive tackle. They ended up getting an edge rusher, and then they ended up getting another safety in the later rounds, which is, helping the secondary and helping their defensive line. And then in fourth place, In third place, I got the Bears. I do think that they're going to be upgraded. I do think Ben Johnson's going to be a great coach, and I do think that they will be a great team. But I see them being a 10-win team. I see the Lions being like an 11 or 12-win team, and I see the Vikings potentially being like a 12 or 13-win team, just because that's how good they are. And the Packers, I got them finishing in last place. I know that this is arguably going to be the toughest division to predict, because last year we had two teams that were battling it out for the top of the division, and then we had two teams that were like, middle of the pack and everything, and it's going to be interesting to see how that is. And now to my division winners I had are the Commanders, the Rams, the Vikings, and the Panthers. So the wild card teams that I have that would potentially come out of here is, I've got the Bears that'll be a wild card team. I've got the Lions that'll possibly be a wild card team. So that leaves one more wild card spot there. Who is it going to be? I have
Cardinals.
No, I actually have the Eagles as the last wild card spot.
I was gonna say, I was like, oh wow. So okay.
No, but the Cardinals, I see them finishing with a positive record, maybe a 9-8 or a 10-7 record and everything. But I do see them missing the playoffs and everything. I do think that defense will be a lot more upgraded, but I think that they are lacking offensively a little bit. They do need another top tier running back. They need another weapon opposite of Marvin Harrison Jr. Yeah, Trey McBride's a great tight end and one of the great young up and coming tight ends, but he is not, those two are not going to, move the needle for me. Now, if you want, I'll go through my AFC and then I'll have you finish it out with yours. It's up to you what you want to do.
Well, I'll definitely start out with the AFC here up on this one. So the AFC East, look, it's very clear. The Buffalo Bills are not moving from the first spot because, just look at that roster. Josh Allen. They also did get another receiver. They got Joey Bosa. They got some defensive pieces. I also am excited about Maxwell Hairston. I think the kid, truthfully, is what they need, especially when you got Taylor Rapp and you've also got Tyron Johnson right there for your defense and for your secondaries. And I think what's good about that is you got shut down guys to eliminate the air game. Second, I have the New England Patriots up in second in this one. And the reason why is because Mike Vrabel, what he does, and I've said this to everybody, he tends to make guys that are about 4th, 5th, or 6th string defensive players look like A players every week. And so to me, but the other thing is, they got a much better offensive line as well. It's not fully in fruition yet, but Will Campbell, that was a very good pick that they got to give Drake May some help. But I also love they got Travion Henderson. You got an elusive running back next to a power back in Ramondre Stevenson. This is the identity Mike Vrabel had in Tennessee. So to me, to put this into New England, and then not to mention, you got the chip off the old block of Josh McDaniels as your offensive coordinator. I think this is a team, like I told you, just like Jim Harbaugh's Chargers. This is one that the Chargers really loved the interview with Mike Vrabel, but I think he has a similar upbringing as to what Harbaugh did. So I have the Patriots finishing second. The Dolphins I have finishing third, but this is going to be so ugly, Chase, because here's the problem. If they don't get this thing right, because they lost their tackle, Armstead, they also, I'm not sure what their run game might look like. I think Devon Achane and also with Jalen Wright, I think they'll be okay in that department. But
didn't they pick up another running back this draft too?
I think they did. But I think I'm just looking at the physicality of this team, Jason. I just don't know what to think of. They don't have Javon Holland. The question mark is still surrounding Jalen Ramsey. And if they lose him, I don't know. I just see this team, it's going to get ugly. And, because the coach is fighting for his job. And so is Chris Greer, the GM. So they have to make this right. But I think it's going to be too much for them. I have the Dolphins finishing third. And then finally the Jets. However, the Jets might actually look a little bit more competitive. They will. Now they did in fact end up getting a tight end. and they also got at least a couple other pieces. I also like Armand Membo.
Ooh, yeah, I do
that
like that.
offensive line looks scary good. With
I like
Elijah
that Mason
Tucker,
Taylor pick. That was a great
yeah,
pickup.
Mason Taylor. I will tell you what, though. That Mason Taylor pick reminds me of when they picked Dustin Keller years ago. I think they really have found their physical and their offensive piece right there. But then you also got to think about, what does Malachi Corley look like? How will Justin Fields really deal with adversity? Because remember, they also lost a quarterback with Jordan Travis due to the injury not healing like it should have. So it's unfortunate. I just think the Jets, it's going to take another year to really build this thing up. But I love the pieces they're building around. And I think Aaron Glenn is going to get the consistency right at this point. So I got Bills, Patriots, Dolphins, Jets. In the AFC North, this is where I kind of have a bit of a change here. I think I have a bit of a change here. I'm going to go with the Cincinnati Bengals winning this division. And the only reason of it is because that Joe Burrow was a man on a mission. Okay. And I think with what they've done with it, they've also got, they've got their defensive players. They know they needed to fix that up because the defense was not doing them any justice. They went and got Al Golden, the defensive coordinator from Notre Dame. I was expecting they would have gotten Xavier Watts, but instead they got Shamar Stewart. We know he's holding for a contract, but don't freak out. This tends to happen. But as far as the Trey Hendrickson thing, this is going to be really interesting to watch them with that. But I think the Bengals, offensively, they're going to be just fine. I also do think the defense is going to get much better. But by the way, I don't think that they're going to be a team. This is not going to be a division where you're going to have more than 12 wins. I don't think this is going to be that kind of division. Now, second will be the Baltimore Ravens. Okay, I know Ravens fans are going to freak out at me about this because Lamar, all this other spiel. But hear me out. I just watched, with the Baltimore Ravens and what they look like. Offensive line is going to give me a little bit of question marks up from there. That's what I'm trying to find out. But I love Derrick Henry. I love Lamar Jackson. I think defensively they got some very good pieces with Mike Gleam and a couple others from there. I really like it. So,
holy cow! I do not mean to interrupt you, but that was the loudest clash of thunder I have heard in a very long time. It scared the shit out of me. Like I thought it was a energy for a second. I was just like,
"Ooh,
it is starting to storm."
I've started to scare out my co-host. I'm bringing in the thunder, man. We're bringing in the energy.
Christ, I guess.
Maybe
you brought
because I have Baltimore in there in a second. So okay, so yeah, they got a couple pieces. I think
who's in third? Let's see.
Yeah, at third place, I have the Steelers in third, but it's not a good one. And the only reason of it is because they'll probably be either 9-8 or 8-9, and they're going to be back up in purgatory again because of this quarterback situation. And then finally, I got the Cleveland Browns. And the only reason of this is, and do not take this the wrong way, but this is actually a good buildup for the Cleveland Browns because their GM and coach are not going to get fired for doing this. But I think if they finish 7-10, or if they're 8-9, here's the good news. You got 2 first-round picks next year. So, to me, you are trying to figure out all of your roster as a collection. Who are going to stay, who you're going to build around, because you've got Myles Garrett for years, and you've got Mason Graham up there. You could maybe go and get another D tackle in the draft with that top pick.
We need
that allows you.
See us getting Caleb Downs.
So you could get a safety. And hey, Caleb Downs, he doesn't have to travel that far. Stays right there in the luxury of Ohio. So that allows you now, because you're going to get safety. I think you could go and get back-to-back defensive guys in those first 2 rounds, those 2 picks in the first round. So that's why I think Cleveland will be interesting as a 4th place team. There won't be the team that just falls apart. Okay, I think this is interesting because, again, your quarterback situation is going to be questionable depending on the situation itself. But I think a lot of this is you're trying to solidify a more consistent roster to now go for a jump. So I've got Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Pittsburgh and Cleveland there in the North. In the AFC South, I do have the Texans winning this division. And I think, to me, I just feel like that the Texans, even though their offensive line, I'm questioning a little bit about because they got rid of Laramie Tunsil, but the defense is really legit. They also got a couple of other weapons because they are trying to figure out what's going on with Tank Dell. So I liked what they did, giving more weapons for C.J. Stroud. They got a new offensive coordinator, so let's see what he looks like outside of Bobby Slowick. But I think the Texans, they win the division again. And the team that finishes second, I got the Tennessee Titans finishing second. And the only reason of it is because I love their defensive front. And I think what Brian Callahan is trying to do is you are trying to now unlock that quarterback position that you couldn't with Will Levis. And here's the other thing. They went and got Xavier Restrepo. Watch that connection between the two. They're going to look really good because I don't see Treylon Burks really making the cut. I think between him and a couple other pieces they have, Tennessee's offense will be much more buttoned up and they'll be much better to watch. So I have them finishing second. The Colts, to me, it's hard because you want Anthony Richardson to work, but the Colts, they also got Daniel Jones. So I feel like I feel like there's going to be a little bit of some question marks at the quarterback position because you want Anthony Richardson to come out the gate accurate, red hot, and then they go on a streak. But what did they really address up on defense as far as their secondary? Because Julian Blackmon is still a free agent.
They got Cam Bynum and they got Trevarius Ward.
So, I mean, they're not bad.
Two great defensive pieces.
They're not
for the
bad.
secondary.
And I think with as far as with some of those key pieces, I don't know if it's quite there yet. But the Colts, they really got to fix this thing up. And then finally, Jacksonville Jaguars.
And then they got JT Tuimoloau as well.
Yeah, so they got some guys, but it's not quite there yet. And then the Jags. Come on. Stop drinking the Kool-Aid, Jacksonville fans. I've been hearing enough of this already for weeks on end, and it's giving me a migraine. But look, I know what all of you are going to probably say to me because Liam Cohen, all this and that. It's not going to be like that. Okay, I think he'll fix up the offense, but your defense is going to – I looked at that schedule, Chase. I don't know if you feel the same way that I do, but they are going to get obliterated by run games all season because I think there's like 8 or 9 of those teams that are built for the trenches. That's not going to look good for Jacksonville. I don't care if whatever Trayvon Walker does by himself or Josh Hines Allen, but
you're not gonna like my AFC picks and everything, so you're gonna be like, what the hell is wrong with you?
Right. Oh, God. But yeah, that's what I think is going to honestly happen from there. So I've got the Texans, Titans, Colts, and Jags, and then the AFC West. This is where I have the change from here, but I am not blazing on this. But I truthfully think this is the year Jim Harbaugh and the LA Chargers win this division. I'm not joking about this. Wow. I look at that schedule. If that doesn't scream to you 12-5, I don't know what does. Because to me, what Jim Harbaugh did last year, win and beat and build a culture. Okay, they went 11-6 with the roster they had, right? And it also gave Justin Herbert a competent coach. So now they got 2 receivers in the draft I really like. They got an underrated tight end out of Syracuse, who I kept saying is a poor man's Colston Loveland. I think he'll be very nice, especially when you pair him with Tyler Conklin. And you still have Will Dissly there for your run blocks, your pass blocks, and, of course, your secondary receiver if you need to for the short dump offs. But the Najee Harris and Amarian Hampton combo, boy, that's going to feed families, especially with that offensive line with as built and as stacked as it is right now. That's all Jim Harbaugh from there. And I think they are going to succeed in those trench warfare. Second, I got the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to disrespect, Patrick Mahomes like that. I really do think that the Kansas City Chiefs, however, is not going to repeat what they did last year because they were tampering with one-score games. That's not happening again this year. I think this is a team that might go 11-6 because they'll still be a playoff team. They will still end up working at least within those trenches, but I think the question mark I have is their run game. That's the question mark I truthfully have with Isaiah Pacheco and a few others. I don't think that's a solid running team. And they're going to figure that out very quickly.
I mean, they got also Kareem Hunt too, so.
Yeah, but again, how much does Kareem Hunt really have left up in the tank after all this?
Probably 1 or 2 more years.
Yeah, so I think you're going to get some value, but not as much as he once was when he first was up in Kansas City. And then finally, I've got the Denver Broncos right there. I think the Broncos, they have a very good record from there. Now, again,
I love their secondary.
I love the secondary. I love the secondary too. I think,
oh my god,
it is the kind that I think can feed families. Seriously,
Jahdae Barron, dude.
Mention,
I was expecting a Marion Hampton with that pick.
Oh no, so did I. I would have expected tight end, running back, but Jahdae Barron on top of the defense they had last year. Not to mention, look at who else they got: Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga. They really doubled down on.
And they got Evan Ingram as well.
Yep. They got Evan Ingram, the tight end. So this is the thing. They got an offensive productive tight end because I watched that team where they had Lil Jordan Humphrey and they also had Adam Troutman and Greg Dulcich. They could not figure out tight end. So now that they got Evan Ingram, it's much better. And I think Bo Nix continuing to produce in the best way. But I do say, though, I think Bo Nix is truthfully going to go with what C.J. Stroud, like what happened with him. Because remember when that team was 10-7, and yet they still went to the playoffs, but they won a playoff game. That's the one thing I see with the Denver Broncos. And the only reason of that is because there are some games in the middle of that I think could be questionable to me. But I do believe this team makes the playoffs again. And then finally, I've got the Las Vegas Raiders, and I think that could be a 9-8. That's going to be a very good last place team going 9-8. Only reason is because culture, new coach, new scheme. I think the Raiders, because the other thing is too, you got Geno Smith at quarterback, and he trusts him a lot in some of those areas, but it's going to be a lot of that trench warfare that Pete Carroll loves to run. Did that up in Seattle. I think he's going to do the same thing again with now Ashton Jeanty, the new running back. It's going to be really, really nice to see them paired up and really take this by storm. So I think the Raiders would be the most competitive fourth-place team in the AFC West. So I've got the Bills, the Bengals, the Texans, and the Chargers as division winners. Now my playoff teams from here will be the New England Patriots, the Baltimore Ravens, and the Denver Broncos. Or the Kansas City Chiefs. I think those are teams right from there. Now, people might actually be furious with the Denver Broncos thing, but I'm telling you, it's going to be so difficult because you're only going to have so many teams that are up and in there, but I think with the Ravens and all that, it might be a little bit hard. But again, New England might not even make the playoffs, but notice how I don't have the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. Told you.
Yeah.
Just wasn't going to do it. So,
yeah, I mean,
fine, but yeah.
Like I said, it happens every year, and we've been witness to it, whether it's division winners or whether it's wild card teams. There's always 3 teams from each conference that are not going to make the playoffs that made it the year before. I mean, if you go back and look at the 2023 season, you had the Cleveland Browns, the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Miami Dolphins in the playoffs. Last year, you didn't have any of them in there except for maybe the Steelers, and that was it. Like you had completely 2 new teams for the AFC that were in there that were not in there the year before. And, let's go through my division winners and playoff predictions and stuff like that, because Jake's going to look at me like I'm crazy, and he's going to look at me, or he's going to probably be happy with who I've got going to the AFC Championship and playing each other at the end. So stay tuned for that here in just a moment. But starting off with the AFC East, going strong, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. It's going to be a no-brainer for this division. Ever since Tom Brady left this division, it's always been the Buffalo Bills division to lose. You know, I think the Miami Dolphins need to go into a complete rebuild. They need an offensive line that, you know, needs to support Tua and everything. And they've like, what else do they have? Tyreek's getting old for the Dolphins. You know, Jalen Waddle's not going to be the only piece. They've got a lot of missing pieces there. So I've got the New England Patriots finishing in second, Miami Dolphins finishing in third. This will be Mike McDaniel's last year for them if they don't end up working out and having a good record and making the playoffs and making it far in the playoffs. And then I got the Jets finishing in fourth place. I mean, that's a no-brainer. That's how this division's going to go. Yeah. We're going to move on to the AFC South. I've actually got the Texans winning this one as well, but I have the Colts finishing in second place. I do think that with Anthony Richardson working with Jordan Palmer this offseason and getting a lot better at his footwork and, you know, working on his decision making, and there's been a lot of rumors swirling around about it, and he hasn't neither confirmed nor denied. But he's gotten like athletic goggles because like he needs glasses, and like his athletic goggles that he's been using at OTAs and everything, he's been throwing a lot better, hasn't really overthrown anybody, has been a lot more accurate, a lot better decision making. I don't know if it's because of working with Jordan or if it's because because he can finally see. You know, it reminds me of a movie that I've seen where they're like, yeah, I can't see a damn thing, and then they give him glasses. He's just like, I can actually throw the ball. Like, yeah. You know, and then the Titans I've got finishing third place in this division. I mean, I love Cam Ward. I love what they've done. They got a much better offensive line, got a great defense and everything, got a lot of good defensive pieces. The only wild card to this is going to be Brian Callahan. Tim is a big fan of the Bengals, wasn't really high on Brian Callahan, and I think that this team lost a step because I have been a real advocate of Will Levis, you know, getting the short end of the stick. I think that, you know, he had one of his better seasons when he was with Mike Vrabel and everything, and he looked like he could have been a franchise quarterback. He just needed one more year. And then they fired Vrabel, got Brian Callahan in there, and then he regressed, and this offense just looked trash. And I think that depending on the Titans' success, it's going to depend on Brian Callahan to see what he can do. And then obviously in last place, we got to see what Liam Cohen can do. Trevor Lawrence hasn't looked like the guy that they predicted to, you know, be the next best thing coming out of the draft. And, you know, it's up to Liam Cohen to see what he can actually do coming out. Then we'll move on to the AFC West. Now, here's where I've got the divisions a little crazy. I actually have the Chiefs finishing in first in this division because I think that, you know, Mahomes isn't going to be made a fool of 2 years in a row. He's going to come back with vengeance. He's going to want to win this division. And I see them with the additions of Jalen Royals, the addition of Jake Brighamstool, and then I think also with getting Josh Simmons on that offensive line and, you know, bolstering it and everything, it's going to be that much of a difference that Patrick Mahomes need to be put over the edge. Not to mention he's in a lot better, like the best shape that he's ever had coming into the league. Second place, I've got the Los Angeles Chargers. It's not a no-brainer here. I think that you've got a team that is set to win now. Because the one thing that the one thing that they've been missing is they've been missing a very competent wide receiver core. And you got that with Trey Harris and the one dude from Tennessee, and now with Omarion Hampton, who could be your pass catching back
from Auburn.
Yep. And I think that the one thing that they're still missing is a great complementary tight end piece, but they'll get that eventually to pair with Justin Herbert in that. And here's where the controversy starts. I've actually got the Raiders finishing in third place in this division over the Broncos, just because.
Wow.
If you look at it, like the Raiders have built this roster from the ground up ever since Pete Carroll got there. They helped bolster that defense drastically in the offseason. They got a lot of key pieces that they needed. On the offensive side of the ball, Ashton Genty getting better, or Ashton Genty bolstering that run game. Then you've got Geno Smith, a quarterback that the Raiders have been needing for a while, and that's one of them. And then also getting another wide receiver later on in the draft to pairing with Jacoby Myers. And I think that the reason why I've got the Raiders finishing in third place in this division is it's a battle of the NFC coaches. You know, back when Pete Carroll was in Seattle, and then you also had him, then you also had Sean Payton in the Saints. They were battling it out with each other to see who was the better NFC coach. Now, Pete Carroll's always prided himself on the offensive line and on how good the defense is. And I think that now with him coming in there, I think that that's the only reason why I've got it is because of how good of a coach Pete Carroll is. And he's going to get the best out of these guys. It's going to be like Jim Harbaugh was with the Chargers, where they come in and they go from a 12 or 6-11 team, and they end up becoming a 9 or 10 win team. I could see that with the Raiders. And I'm not going to say that the Broncos are going to be far off. They're going to have like 9 wins or so, but I see a regression in Bo Nix play this year just because that's all he's going to hit and everything. So, you know, you can bash on me if this prediction doesn't
pan. No, I'm not bashing. I'm a little surprised.
Yeah, like you can come back to this and be like, haha, you know, you were stupid for that. But now it's gonna be coming to the AFC North because, you know, call me a homer if you want and say what you want, but here's the reason, and it's well overdue for this to happen. No, it's well overdue for this to happen, and you know, I'm surprised that it hasn't. But I've got the Cincinnati Bengals winning the division.
Okay,
and I've got the Browns finishing in second, the Steelers finishing in third, and then the Ravens finishing last. Just because
you gotta be kidding me.
I have a feeling, I have a very strong feeling in my gut that around week 6 or week 7, Lamar Jackson's going to sustain a major injury, and he is going to be out for the rest of the season. And that is going to be the reason why the Ravens go from being like, you know, 5-1 or 6-1 at that point in time to finishing in last place in that division, because the backup quarterback's not going to be anywhere close to what Lamar Jackson was.
Did you have Raven fans literally trolling off the air on you, and that's why you put them in fourth?
No. I honestly 100% have a gut feeling that something bad is going to happen to Lamar this year. And like, I never want to wish this upon any quarterback in the NFL or any person. Let's get that clear. Let's get that clear out there right now. I never want to wish this upon any person ever to sustain an injury, because that is heart-wrenching, and you know, you never want to go through that. But I have a feeling that something is going to happen with this Ravens team this year. It's going to be a major injury to a substantial player, and I have a feeling it could be Lamar, to where it's like a broken leg or a torn ACL or maybe even like a shoulder problem, to where it's going to put him out, and they are going to finish in last. So with that being said, here's the playoff picture and how I believe it's going to go. Because with the teams like having playoff and appearances that weren't there the year before, now my division winners were the Bengals, Chiefs, Bills, and Texans. Now, for the wild card teams for the playoffs, I actually have the Chargers as the 5 seed, just because they are going to be that much better, especially with the offense that they got and the upgraded, playmakers. It's going to make them that much better. Then with the 6th seed for the playoffs here, it's going to be a little tricky, because you've got a lot of, teams that, maybe the Broncos make it, maybe the Dolphins make it in there and whatnot. I actually am going to sit here and say that I can either, it's going to be a tough choice, but it's either going to come down with the Indianapolis Colts making it, or I can honestly sit here and say that it's going to be the, I'm drawing a blank on the divisions right now. It's West, East, South, and North. So, I can honestly sit here and see, maybe we could see the Dolphins in here. But I'm going to go with the Colts for my 6th seed. And then for the 7th seed, I'm going to go with Cleveland. I think that, everybody's underestimating how well the roster is and how much better it's gotten. They don't realize how good Joe Flacco played for us. And if not, Shedeur Sanders looks like he could be that guy in the NFL. And then I just truly think that we have a roster that is built to win in big games. And we've seen it. We've seen that they can do that, and I've got them finishing with a 10-win season and making the playoffs. Now here's how the playoffs are going to go. The Chiefs are going to have the bye week, and then the Chargers are going to be the 5 seed playing the Texans. They're going to smack the crap out of the Texans. Browns are going to lose to the Kansas City Chiefs. Then you've got the lowest remaining seed is going to play the Chiefs after that. Well, they're going to beat the Colts, and then the Chargers are going to beat whoever they play. And then you're going to have a Los Angeles Chargers, Kansas City Chiefs AFC Championship matchup, and the Chiefs are going to win.
Oh, you really have to make it suspenseful right from there. We could definitely agree on the NFC, but in the AFC, that's really interesting. And again, I get your point of view from it, but I mean, that's a little spicy and tasteful. I'm not gonna lie.
I mean, honestly, like if Lamar sustains a major injury this year, you're gonna text me and you're gonna be like, "How dare you?"
I will. I probably would. Or if he honestly ends up going off and they make the playoffs, I'll be like, "Don't ever do that again."
Look, I only said what I said because I have a feeling something's going to happen with the Ravens this year.
Oh boy. Well, all right. Oh, what a good week though. 2 interviews.
Crazy predictions.
Yeah, crazy predictions and so much more. We got everything else all in store next week. I'm so excited about it, but yeah, I mean, this NFL scheduling is going to be really, really something else, but it'll be interesting to see what the season goes like. Well, great to have all of you all week long here up on the show. Had some great interviews from Deb Witkos and Powell Ziegman. Really, really loved the collaborations we had this week, and we're hoping for more of it, so stay tuned for it next week. With Chase and myself, we got to wrap it up and enjoy a long week we've had. So appreciate everybody for joining us. Chase and myself, we are signing off. Have a great rest of your weekend and enjoy the rest of these playoffs because I know that we are. Take care and see you later, guys. We'll see you next week.